Hello, Cheeseheads, and thanks for tuning in for the latest instalment in my Sunday transfer show. You know, I think it's fair to say that in every transfer window that fans, and maybe this is particular to Spurs fans, reach a sort of impasse, a point in the summer where impatience gets the better of them, demanding business gets done and asking why we haven't been in for a certain player who appears to have been an easy target and needs to move to, seemingly moving to a rival club. In previous windows for Spurs, this is perhaps understandable. Daniel Levy, I think it's fair to say, has a certain reputation with fans that perhaps have seen a struggle in the transfer market in the past. But the amount of grief I've seen him come in for on Twitter this week is unbelievable. This all centres around Jed Spence and the news that Daniel Levy has taken over the negotiations with Spence's club, Middlesbrough. Now, news of this broke just under a week ago, and then came the news that the clubs are around £5 to £10 million apart in their valuation. Cue absolute multiple meltdowns on Twitter. Remember, Spence, who will turn 22 this summer, is a championship level player who Middlesbrough didn't even want last season. He managed 70 appearances in 4 years for them before his loan move to Forest, where admittedly he has had a breakout season. His old manager, Neil Warnock, even said to him, you will either be Premier League or non-league. So, little bit of a punt, I think it's fair to say. And yet here we are with now 10 weeks left of the transfer window, 10 weeks still. And people are berating Levy for refusing to, and I quote, lay down a few more million and get it done. Even transfer guru Fabrizio Romano got involved this weekend, imploring fans to let Fabio Paratici work and praising Spurs for signing 3 players in 2 weeks. He also mentioned the work that went into signing Ivan Perisic and Yves Bissouma, and definitely for that tweet wins my Tweet of the Week award. For what it's worth, we do know the deal for Spence isn't dead, and the Spurs have mooted a certain amount of money with performance-related add-ons and also possible loans to Middlesbrough. But that no official bid has gone in. My understanding is that Borough's initial request was for more than £20 million, and the Spurs balked at that price, perhaps, in my view, understandably so. Indeed, we can play a little game here. Can you, viewers, name the 5 players who have moved to the Premier League from the Championship for £20 million or more? Remember, they can't have played in the Premier League already. Okay, so there are 5 players who moved to the Premier League from the Championship with no Premier League experience for £20 million plus. Only one of them, and this is your only clue, only one of them is a defender, which I think in itself speaks volumes. If you put your answers down in the comments box, then at the end of the show, we will reveal the players and exactly who they are. Now, onto some transfer speculation, and after the news this week that Spurs distanced themselves, in my view, unfortunately, from a bid for Christian Eriksen, Fabio Paratici flew to Italy to discuss possible ins and outs with a number of clubs. Now, we haven't got time to cover every single name on that meeting, from those meetings, but the first name that broke into mainstream media is that of Nicolo Zaniolo, an absolute monster of an attacking midfielder who has 81 appearances for Italy. 81 appearances for Roma and 9 caps for Italy. Indeed, it was Zaniolo's goal in the Europa Conference League final that won Jose Mourinho his coveted trophy, and the fact that he's now won to every club, and Spurs is still the only trophy that he hasn't won, only club that he hasn't won a trophy with. Zaniolo will not come cheap, likely to cost around €50 million. And he has had 2 anterior cruciate ligament injuries, which he's done very well to come back from at quite a young age. I think he's only 23. Personally, I think this transfer will be seen as too much of a risk by Paratici for the outlay that's required. Zaniolo has undoubted potential and is an absolute unit at 6'3". Outstanding on the ball, running stats are great. But with those 2 big injuries behind him and the fact that he only has 2 years left on his current Roma deal, I can see Spurs shelving this one for now, and quite possibly, I think, going back if we're still interested in the summer, depending on how this season goes for him, particularly around those injuries. Indeed, a much more likely transfer for that attacking midfield position that I think it's fair to say Spurs are actively trying to fill would be Inter Milan's Hakan Calhanoglu. Now, as we have reported a few times on this show, Inter Milan are still in the position where they need to move some players on this summer as they look to balance the books, and reports suggest that the Turkish player could be available for as little as €30 million. Calhanoglu is a fantastic player. You may remember he left AC Milan on a free last summer to go cross city to their rivals. What a player he was, both for AC and Inter. Unfortunately, unable to win the league, and the teams that he left then went on to win the league, which is a little bit of a conundrum. But let's just have a look at some of his stats and put that on the bigger screen there. Absolutely fantastic player wherever he's been in terms of goals and assists and just pure creativity. 34 starts this season. Calhanoglu scored 7 times, also chipped in with 12 assists. And what's interesting is that his expected assist rate was 8.64. So he's overperforming when it comes to creativity. What could make this, I think, more likely, of course, is the impending arrival, protracted arrival, it's fair to say, of Paulo Dybala. Someone who will obviously take up a similar role to Calhanoglu. There have also been reports, particularly in Italian media of Giovanni Lo Celso or Davinson Sanchez going the other way. But my understanding is that Inter want a cash-only deal for reasons that I've covered before, and that Spurs value the players mooted as the same, around the same as Calhanoglu. So I think player swaps are unlikely on this. Now, there were more rumours this week about players other than Jed Spence in that right wing-back role. One they mentioned is this man, Jonathan Klaus. Now, without wishing to go all fantastic here, Klaus can certainly claim that he delivers on time. 11 assists, 5 goals last season, as well as 3.7 tackles and interceptions per match. Broke into the France team as well. I think he's got 4 or 5 caps for France. And it is rumoured he is available for as little as £10 million. Now, if Tottenham were to make this a reality, I think it's fair to say Daniel Levy signing clause would make all his Christmases come early. Obviously, when you compare an international player who has consistently delivered over the last few seasons in a top European league, being available for half the price of the aforementioned Jed Spence, maybe you can begin to see why Daniel Levy is hesitant to spend the money he is on Spence. As I said earlier, it is important to remember that we are only in June. This also has a bearing for some transfer business being conducted around Europe that affects Spurs later down the line. One of which is actually the transfer of Sebastian Haller from Ajax to Borussia Dortmund. You may have seen the ex-West Ham player is all set for a move to the German club to replace Erling Haaland. And that West Ham actually failed to negotiate a sell-on fee when they sold him for a £20 million loss a few seasons ago. But this deal, even though it's been widely mooted and it's considered done, has actually failed to be announced. And this is because Ajax do not want the deal to show in their figures for the financial year 21-22, which for them ends on June the 30th. They are looking to announce the deal in their new financial year starting July the 1st, though later on this week. And this in turn means delaying their move for Spurs forward Steven Bergwijn. The Evening Standard have reported this week that Bergwijn is all set to join Ajax and a fee has been agreed between the clubs. And my understanding is that personal terms were actually agreed between Ajax and Bergwijn back in January when they initially tried to purchase the player. And that has not changed. Everything is all set, ready to go. Adding all the pieces together, I believe we will see Bergwijn join Ajax in the next 7 to 10 days. It's a little bit of a sad end for a player who I think has impressed in fits and starts, but never quite found his rhythm at Spurs. Definitely leaves with the club's best wishes and Antonio Conte's best wishes as well, I think. But he's looking obviously to cement his place in that Dutch team for the forthcoming World Cup. Now, it's normally time at this point for Seb's Honest Insider Transfer exclusive of the week. However, I'm sorry to disappoint this week. We have no name to give you. Our Honest Insider has said that every name possible has been mentioned this week. And that as we hit silly season, and I think it's fair to say that's where we're at now, there'll be plenty of rumours and made up stories doing the rounds. However, he did confirm that Spurs do have or have had interest in these 3 Brazilian players. And that interest at various points has been genuine. Richarlison, Rafinha and Gabriel Jesus have all been linked with a number of clubs this summer, with Arsenal and Chelsea providing the main competition. It is our understanding, however, that Arsenal's main intention is for Jesus, while Chelsea and Arsenal themselves are more likely destinations for Rafinha. Chelsea trying to free up room with the impending sale of Hakim Ziyech, or I think it might be a loan with option to buy to AC Milan. Does that mean Spurs are favourites for Richarlison? I think it probably does. We'll have to see. There is some talk that personal terms have already been agreed, and it's just a case of waiting for a financial agreement to be put in place between Spurs and Everton. That, in turn, could have ramifications for this man, Harry Winks. Everton and Frank Lampard in particular are very interested in taking a midfielder. But Everton's financial predicament is still ongoing, even with potential sales of Richarlison and other players that have been mooted to lead that club. And they are looking at a loan deal. Spurs, however, want to sell the midfielder and reduce their possible outgoing on the purchase of Richarlison. Of course, Spurs are under no pressure to loan Winks, who has been told that he can find a club this summer and leave Spurs. As we mentioned last week, Crystal Palace and Brighton are interested and do have the funds up front to be able to purchase Winks. In other news, Cheeseheads, I can't quite believe I'm saying this. There is news on the Tanguy Ndombele front, genuine this time. It appears that the Frenchman could be set for a move to Turkish giants Galatasaray. It's my understanding that Galat are prepared to meet a large chunk of Ndombele's reported £200,000 a week wage, and that the deal is in place for a loan with an option to buy. It appears Turkey is a hotbed for hard-working former Spurs players, currently hosting George Kevin Nkoudou and Gedson Fernandes, as well as previously seeing star strikers like Vincent Janssen and Emmanuel Adebayor light up the Turkish league. This seems, in that scenario, a perfect move for our fleet-footed Frenchman. And the final player we are covering this week as a possible incoming is this man, Newcastle star Alan Saint-Maximin. There were plenty of rumours this week linking Spurs with a £40 million move in what would surely, in my opinion, be a move that would excite all Spurs fans. Most British media outlets reported this week that the Frenchman's head has been turned by reputed interest from Spurs and that they would look to double his £40,000 a week wage. Seems crazy with all of Newcastle's newfound wealth that they are not offering him more money to get him to stay. But Saint-Maximin himself has spoken about the possibility of leaving Newcastle in the past, mainly for a bid to get international honours for France. Indeed, he speaks of himself glowingly, saying that he hopes to one day win the Ballon d'Or. Interesting and lofty ambitions maybe, but this is one to definitely keep an eye on. We know how much Conte is methodical with his planning and his patterns of play. But if you also possess a maverick like Saint-Maximin, which I think is fair to say is, that is surely just another weapon to have on top of your pre-planned ideas. I was at the Tottenham match at home to Newcastle last season. And even though Spurs fans were in top voice that day, obviously with a 5-1 win, the noise that Newcastle fans made whenever Saint-Maximin gets on the ball is absolutely electric. I just picture that in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium with Saint-Maximin in a Spurs shirt. Have to say, this is probably, out of all the rumours, the one that excites me the most this summer. The one that doesn't excite me the most, and the winner of this week's Rubbish Rumour of the Week award, comes this week from Calcio Mercato journalist Rudy Giletti, who tweeted this, that Real Madrid have Son Heung-min on their list of potential transfers this summer. In turn, this was picked up by various news outlets, including this one, Football 365, who managed to put a fee on Son in their headline of £67.5 million, with no mention of it in the article, no quotes, no reference points, absolutely nothing at all. It was then picked up by the Mail Online, The Sun, I think it was even covered by Sky Sports. So many media outlets just based on the single tweet that had no information or fact at all behind it. Absolutely, without doubt, the winner of the Rubbish Rumour of the Week. One thing I think we can all agree on is any fee mentioned to get Son out of Spurs is surely, I think, 9 figures. And Son is tied to Spurs until 2025. So rumour scores 0 out of 10 for credibility. And that, Cheeseheads, is this week's transfer talk. Short and brief, but I hope to the point, and I hope we've given you a few names and a little bit of an update on what's going on at Tottenham at the moment. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. It's very much appreciated. Please remember to hit that like button and subscribe. That way you can be kept up to date with all the latest Cheese Room YouTube shows. There'll be a lot more coming at you this week from Caller, HG, John, Shan, Becky, Dave, all the YouTube team, as well as podcasts from Franco, Paul, and I think even me, I'm getting involved on the podcast. So much content that we're going to be put out for you to enjoy this summer. Before we go, let's just get the answers to these championship players that are no Premier League experience, who've moved to the Premier League for over 20 million. As I said, there are 5, and they are as follows. James Maddison, 22.5 million. Ollie Watkins, the most expensive at 30.6 million. Neil Maupay at 20 million. Said Benrahma at just under 21 million. And Adam Webster for 20 million. So you can see a bit of a mixed bag, and it brings me back to my original point of why maybe clubs would be so hesitant to spend £20 million plus on a championship player with one decent season behind him. Right, cheeseheads, thank you again for watching. As always, before I go, I'd like to thank John and JP for their time and help spent putting the show together, particularly with the graphics. It takes a lot of work, so I really appreciate that. And as always, cheeseheads, come on, you Spurs!